Hello everyone and welcome to the new lecture of full stack web development course. In this lecture we are going to discuss the table in HTML. So let's create an HTML file table.html, but before going to start with the table, let's discuss about the table structure. What is a table? A table is nothing but a two-dimensional structure which is divided into rows and columns. So we have came across the table in many of the application, many of the situations. Like if you look onto this structure, this is a tabular structure where the table has been divided into rows and columns. The vertical subdivision of the table is said to be column. So this is the column, one column, this is the second column, this is the third column. Same wise, horizontal subdivision of the table are known as rows. So this entire horizontal subdivision, this is one row, this is the second row, this is the third row, this is the fourth row. Similarly, vertical subdivisions are known as column, whereas horizontal subdivisions are known as rows. And the intersection of rows and column form a small rectangular square section which are known as cell. So every single section which is created by the intersection of row and column is said to be a cell. So this is cell, this is a cell, this is a cell, all these are cells. So this is a table structure. How do we create a table in HTML, or if we need to display something in a table onto our web page, how do we create that? That is going to be discussed in this lecture. So first of all, let's generate the boilerplate. And now what we are going to do, we are going to start with the table. So to create a table in the web page, we use the table tag. Write the table tag, okay, and inside the table tag or inside the table we need to create the rows and column. To create a table row, we use the tr tag, and to create the column subdivision inside that row, we use the td tag. So the td tag is basically used to create the column inside the rows. For example, if a row has to be divided into 3 columns, so we will have 3 different table data tag. So these 3 columns will be created in the table. So if we put something inside this, for example, column 1, and likewise if we say column 2 and column 3 in the last one. So 3 columns will be created in the first row of the table. So if I run this program, let's go live. So this is the table which is created. These are the column 1, 2 and 3, and these 3 columns are forming a row. So there is a single row in the table with 3 columns, 1, 2 and 3. Now what we'll do, we'll add one more row to this table. Let's go back to the code and create one more row. So I am copying this and creating one more row to this table, and just change this 1, 2 and 3 to 4, 5 and 6. Let's go back again. Now you can check. This time what we have done is we have created 2 rows, row 1 and row 2, and in every row there are 1, 2 and 3 column, 1 column, 2 column and 3 column, whereas row 1 and row 2. And one thing which we can notice is there are no borders given to the table. There are no borders because we haven't assigned any border to this table. So for assigning the border to the table, what we can do is we can use the border attribute with the table, but all the styling has now been shifted to the CSS. So it's not advised to do the styling work with the HTML. So if we still need to assign the border to the table, we can go with border attribute and we can assign certain values, say 5 to the border, and you can go and check the border now. Now we can check that the values are getting displayed with border. Now you can easily distinguish between the columns and rows. That is, if you can see that this entire set is the row 1 and this is the row 2 and likewise these are the column, this is the column 1, this is the column 2, this is the column 3, and same way these are the column 1, 2 and 3 of the second row. So this is how we can create a table in HTML. Now let's go back to our code. Apart from that, you have observed that there is no space or sufficient space between the column, neither there is space inside the cell. If you observe, that cell is very compact and it is sized as per the content. There is no padding, there is no spacing between the cell. All this because the styling, as I have said, styling is not appreciated, neither advised to be used with HTML. All the styling work has been now assigned to the CSS. So for styling that purpose, that is the generating padding or generating any kind of space between the cell, everything could be done through CSS. As you have seen that there is no space between the cells, that is cells are closely collapsed, they are attached to each other. So we can do using CSS styling. But although we are not covering the styling or CSS styling, so I am just showing the example that it could be done. Border spacing could be generated through CSS, that 10 pixel space could be generated. If you go and see the table now, you can see that the in between the cell, in between the border, there are gaps generated. So we can generate gaps between the borders. So now the content of the table seem to be spread out. Similarly, if you have seen, if you observe that there are multiple borders in the table, first outer border, and for every cell there is a separate border that can also be erased. A single border could be used, but to apply that we need to apply border collapse setting. But when we'll collapse the border spacing will be gone. So if I say border collapse, so what will happen? The collapse property, by default it's separate. If I apply collapse, the border will collapse into single border. Now you can check but the spacing between the border has been removed. So this is how we can have single border, that is outer border plus inner border. And same to that, and even we can have some inner space. We can apply inner space, that if you observe that the cells are very close to each other and the content if you see the size of the cell, the size has been the cell has been sized as per the content. It's very compact. So if you want to increase that, you need to add certain internal space in the cell. You can even use the styling, and for that what we can do is we can have the style tag, and in the style tag for the TR and TD I can apply certain styling like padding. If I apply certain padding, say 10 pixel of padding inside the cell, what we can do is we can apply this 10, and now you can check the cells are little spaced. All around the space there are 10 pixel gap between the border and the content of the cell. So all the sides, the padding is used to apply certain space within the cell of the table. But for time being, all these styling will be discussed separately in the CSS chapter, but for time being, just for sake of little space, we have applied this minimum styling through CSS. Now let's concentrate back again on the table. Table tag is used to create the table. TR is used to generate the table row. In the table row, how many columns are required could be generated by using the TD tag. But if you observe that in every table, I can just generate few more rows. Say I will copy this and I'll paste this for few more times. And now if I look onto the table, you can see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, and every row is having 3 columns. Generally, we observe that the first row of the table contains the heading. So, how to generate the heading cell? Generally, heading could be generated by using the TH tag instead of TD tag. Basically, TH tag gives more emphasis on the content to demonstrate that the content given on the first row are heading, not the normal content. So basically they are emphasized by making them bold and That's why they seems to be little more important than the other. So what we can do is, in this head 1, and similar to head 1, we can copy this to the other cell where the headings are there, heading, and change this 1 into 2 and 2 and the last one into 3. Now if you go back to this, you can see that this first row of the table has now been converted into heading style by using the th tag. So what we can do, for the heading row, all this data, all the columns could be defined. Instead of using td, you can use th. So th tag is basically used to define the heading cell or heading column of the table. Similarly, if you observe that there is no title over the table, if you want to put certain title over the table, we can use the caption tag. The caption tag is basically used to give the caption to the, or the title to the table. So what I can do is, I can write the caption tag, and inside the caption tag I can give any heading or the title to the table. Say my first table as the heading. Now if you go back to the table in the web page, you can see now the heading is getting displayed over the table as my first table. You can even align this title to any of the direction, top, bottom, left, right. The title could be placed, but generally title is either placed on the top or at the bottom of the table. So if I need to assign this to the bottom, I can use the align attribute and I can pass bottom to this. And now if I go and check, now what happened? Yes, you can see that the heading or the title of the table is displayed on the bottom. So similarly, you can align it on left or right, but it's not advisable, because everything, every styling, even the caption side, could be decided by the styling of CSS. So the same thing that we have used using align, which is in red color, this means that these things had been removed or not advised to be used in the HTML. So I can do the same thing with the style by using the caption side, and you can easily specify the side as bottom, and the same result will be seen. See, and if I change the side from bottom to say top, the same title could be seen on the top of the table. So everything could be styled using the style CSS, that is cascading style sheet, and that will be discussed separately. So this is how the caption or the title of the table could be decided. But remember, one thing is very important, that whenever you specify the caption for the table, the caption should be at the top, that is before any other tag inside the table tag. So now next thing is, after creating the table and the table column and the table row, now we can do one thing, we can decide the width. If you see the size of the table, side of the table is decided as per the content. So you can even decide the width of the table by using the width attribute, width, and you can specify the width of the table. Okay, say I specify the width as 50%. Percentage can be used as the relative unit. Now you can see that the table has been resized as the 50% of the screen, or the size, the width of the browser. Similarly, if you resize the browser, the size of the table will be resized accordingly. So if I say, because percentage is a relative size, if I resize the table, the size of the table will be done accordingly. You can even have some specific unit, say 500 pixel can also be used. That is not relative, that is a fixed size. So if I again see the output after assigning width as 500, the the width of the table could be changed into 500. So this is the 500 pixel width of the, and this is not relative. If I resize the screen, that doesn't affect the size of the table, whereas the percentage was the relative. So even you can align the table into center or the side of the screen. So if I see this, now the table has been aligned into the center of the screen. All this styling could be done through the CSS coding, but still if we are not using CSS, these things could be done. That is, the width of this table could be decided. Even the height of the rows could be decided using the height attribute. For example, say the heading tag should be have some extra height in compared to the other. Say I want to have 50 pixel as the height of this first row, that is the title row. So now you can see the height of the first row, which is containing the heading, is comparatively more than the other cell of the table. So we can use even the height attribute to decide the height of any of the row of the table. So similarly, you can even increase or decrease the width of the cell and all. So this is how you can create a table. Now one more thing which need to be discussed is, we can even span a particular cell into multiple rows or into multiple columns. Say if in the first row of the table I want to expand this first cell into these 3 different columns, that I want a single cell to be spanning in all these 3 columns in the first row of the table. So how we can do that? We can do that by using call span property, and I can specify how many columns do you want. If I want a single heading, and in that case what we can do is, we can simply span the first row of the first column of, or the first cell of the first row into 3 different columns. Now if you go and see, now you can check that the single cell is spanning into three different columns of the table. Similarly, if I need to span certain cell into multiple rows, say this 2 cell need to be, say this cell has to span into multiple rows. I say I want this first column to be spanning into all rows. Okay, I want this entire column to be occupied by a single cell. So what we can do is, we can use the row span property. Using the row span property, we can span a particular cell into multiple rows. So what we are going to do is, we are going to span this row span, and say we are going to span it for 4. And now what we are going to do, we are going to remove one cell from every row, because these cells are no longer going to be used, because the single cell of the second row is going to span through all the other rows in that particular column. So if you go and see, you can check that this cell which we have spanned through multiple rows has taken the space of all these 1, 2, 3 and 4 rows. So what we have done, we have spanned this particular cell into 4 rows. So these 2 properties, that is row span and call span, can be used to span a particular cell into multiple columns and multiple rows. So this is all for this lecture. In this lecture we have discussed how to create a table in HTML, and how to create rows, and how to create columns into that table. We have also discussed the various styling, that is how to decide the width of the table, how to align the table, even the border of the table could be done. And we have discussed some of the CSS property, although those properties will be discussed in detail when we will be doing the CSS. We have discussed the border spacing, border collapse, and even we have discussed this padding property, through which we can put some internal space within the cell. And after that we have also discussed the caption property. Caption property is used to assign certain title to the table, and using the caption side property of the style sheet, we can even change the side of the title from top to bottom. And similarly, we have also discussed call span and row span, which are used to span a particular cell into multiple column and multiple rows. So thank you for watching this video. Please give a valuable feedback after watching the video in the comment section. Thank you.